NHS staff are being taught how to convert to Islam. The NHS Muslim Network has received NHS time and cash in order to promote the interests of British Muslims. But it's gone one step further. It's created a guide on how to convert to Islam, detailing the conversion process, the rules you must abide by, how to deal with family members who disapprove, but also reassuring the reader that converting to Islam will be the, quote, best decision you ever make. The NHS Muslim Network is sponsored by some of Britain's top civil servants, one of whom called on NHS workers to fast during Ramadan in order to show, quote, allyship with Muslim colleagues. Is this what taxpayers think they're funding? So you're concerned a little bit about religion creeping into public services?
Absolutely. What is the matter with the British people? What are they pandering to?
That sounds very bizarre, to be honest.
Are religious groups widening division?
You know, it doesn't matter what your religious level is or your theology, you're going to face Islamophobia or anti-Muslim hatred.
And is DEI to blame?
Islam has successfully painted itself almost as a victim. People are taking the knee to Islam.
Now, the news is awash with stories of how the NHS is cash-strapped and on its knees, yet this organisation has found the resources to give to a religious network of staff, and they appear to be using them to spread their religion. The NHS Muslim Network tells NHS workers they believe everyone is born Muslim, and the process of conversion is very simple, but that some family members and friends may not initially have a positive reaction. They say the guide was written with the intention of pleasing God by providing support to converts to Islam, and later summarises modest dress, telling readers that wearing the hijab is abiding by an obligation passed to us by God. It recommends those interested in Islam to visit a mosque and instructs the reader on worship etiquette. Under the section entitled Becoming Muslim, NHS staff are congratulated for their decision to convert. It's simple, it says. One must declare the faith, known as a shahada. The guide says that only when you're ready should you tell people you've converted to Islam, and that some family members and friends may initially not have a positive reaction. The network tells the convert they should enlist a, quote, trusted friend to speak to as you adjust into your new life, who can help with any difficult reactions. NHS workers are ran through tutorials on the process of prayer, known as Salah. It tells the NHS staff their efforts to learn will, God willing, be rewarded. The, quote, newly practising convert will take time to learn how to pray, as they'll need to learn to recite some Arabic. In the section on Ramadan, NHS staff are told fasting for a new Muslim can be physically and emotionally exhausting, though obligatory. Women are told they are obliged to wear loose-fitting, modest clothing covering all parts of the body, aside the face, hands and feet. This is known as hijab. By complying, converts are, quote, abiding by an obligation passed to us by God. New Muslims are told they must not be alone or have any physical contact with anyone who is not someone you can marry or a close family member. The network says this would, quote, present a small challenge to the Great British Handshake. Converts are told not to feel obliged, but to instead assert that, quote, you don't shake hands with members of the opposite sex for religious reasons. NHS managers are told that seeing someone increase their faith practices as a new Muslim can be a surprise and create some mixed emotions. But the new dedication, quote, shouldn't be too concerning. It closes out this section by reassuring staff that it may take time for colleagues and patients to get used to the new modest dress, and to try to stay positive as they are, quote, doing it for God, and it's a wonderful thing. Staff are guided through how to navigate Christmas and Easter with their families as a new Muslim, saying if they no longer feel comfortable in participating in rituals like Secret Santa, they should feel confident in opting out. The network tells staff it may take some time to fully separate from some of the aspects of British culture that don't align with Islam. Social gatherings, including a trip to the pub or a bar, quote, do not align with keeping a halal diet, and to an extent remaining modest. However, it says instead, there are always ways to enjoy time with those who bring you closer to God. This guide has been circulated to NHS staff across the country. In addition, workers were called on to fast during the NHS Ramadan challenge to understand how Muslim colleagues feel when they're fast, and that it, quote, is a great way to show allyship. The challenge involves abstaining from eating and drinking from dawn to sunset. I've not seen any invitations for non-Christians to participate in Lent, nor for non-Jews to fast for Yom Kippur. NHS Chief Strategy Officer Chris Hobson endorsed it, confirming in the flyer circulated to staff that he was taking part to demonstrate his own allyship and called on staff to do the same. The NHS allows its workers to join networks with funding from the taxpayer. It's part of a diversity and inclusion drive to promote equality. There are 9 of these, including for LGBT staff, Christians and Jews. Workers are given time off from their usual roles for network duties. The NHS website says this is at least 2 days a month per member of staff. There are 12 NHS members of staff as part of the executive team, so not including any that we don't know about. That's at least 24 working days a month the NHS could be losing, and the NHS Muslim Network is recruiting. The argument for DEI policies is they can help take account of the needs of diverse staff, boosting morale in the process. All networks are entitled to the same NHS resources, though I've not found any guides from the Jewish or Christian networks on conversion to their religion. NHS chaplain Dr. Sheikh Ramsey told me staff networks could end up improving the patient experience, but that anything that could be interpreted as trying to spread the religion was unacceptable.
The religion will help in any organization, including the network for the hospitals.
What we found with the NHS Muslim Network, so that's run by Muslim members of staff at the NHS, they've published a guide telling NHS staff how to convert to Islam. What do you think about that? Do you think that's appropriate?
I don't think it's the right things. I don't think the right things is no one can convert, of course, missionaries. They write, of course, they have leaflets they give away, but they don't write. Is not the matter is not converting to Islam. The matter is helping the people to get better. But of course, it is wrong if they put, for example, some booklet for the thing and they give it to government, say how to convert it. That is wrong. That is proselytization. No one can convert anyone except God, because the Almighty God says in the Holy Book, even Prophet, peace be upon him, could not convert his uncle.
The NHS Muslim Network, they have an executive sponsor, and together with their executive sponsor, they've publicised and tried to encourage non-Muslim members of NHS staff to fast for Ramadan. What do you think about that?
The fasting is very good for the digestion and for bodies. It's not just eating and become obese.
It says in the guide that they should specifically fast to show allyship to Muslims. Would you agree with that, or do you think these?
No, at all. That's wrong. That's not the spirit of Islam. That's not. We encourage them to come for iftar, not fasting. Welcome to come, because it is a tradition. For example, if next door neighbor is a Jewish, Christian, Hindus, and so non-Muslim, they take a dish for him, because we say one weekend. That is what. But no, under no circumstances has to be. Oh, you have to hold with me, or we have to hold. Is my choice to hold it, and you do not need to be embarrassed or push yourself and hold fast, even 2 hours for the holding.
So what do you think of the people that have written these guides that run the Muslim Network? Do you think they're wrong?
Wrong.
Do they have a wrong interpretation?
Wrong. That's what wrong. With all respect to them, maybe they are very scholars. I don't know, but our scholars sometimes making a mistake. I would not agree, because it is not a spirit of Islam, and it is damaging the spirit of Islam. Is maybe a tradition of somewhere.
As you say, you've worked as a Muslim chaplain in the NHS for a long time. Have you ever witnessed any proselytising from any religions or any groups?
No, this is totally wrong. I respect their religion. They respect mine. If I don't respect their religion, they do not respect mine. Therefore, we come no cohesion, no integration. and phobia comes, Islamophobia, anti-Semitism, and so on, which it is totally wrong.
People on the street were furious.
I think all this is pandering. I'm just disgusted. And this is, from an old woman coming.
So you're concerned a little bit about religion creeping into public services?
Absolutely. If I go to ex-Muslim country, they don't all say, oh, well, because you're Christian, we're going to convert everything into Christianity or Buddhism, do they? And I've travelled quite a lot. So what is the matter with the British people? What are they pandering to?
What has religion or spirituality got to do with medical care? Like, I know that there's certain practices, like Jehovah's won't take blood and things like that, but what's it got to do with? It's everyone's individual thing. That sounds very bizarre, to be honest.
I don't think religion and politics should come into healthcare. To me, it's a neutral ground. I've been subjected to homophobia because of religious beliefs, and a hospital setting or any healthcare setting isn't the right place for that. There's too many chiefs and not enough Indians, and I think they should be a cull at the top.
The NHS Muslim Network was headed by 3 co-chairs, Shahal Sheikh, Halima Dagia and Riaz Patel. Halima's an NHS manager. Here's what she had to say on what diversity and inclusion means to her.
Inclusion for me means being able to be your authentic self. For me, that is for my colleagues to recognise that I am an intersectional individual, someone who is Muslim, a female from a global majority background, and also someone who has a disability, someone who is neurodiverse.
She's also been ranked one of Europe's 50 most powerful Muslim women. Dagia's NHS employer confirmed to me that the network's guide for new Muslims, telling NHS staff how to convert, has been publicised to all staff. And it sits openly on an NHS diversity training website. They're also used as a resource for youngsters training in health and sport degrees at Brighton University. The NHS Muslim Network received £2,655 in 2023 to fund its work. We're waiting to hear back on what they might have received in other years. It's unclear what other networks have received during the same period. All networks are sponsored by higher-ups, and the NHS Muslim Network sponsor is one of the UK's top civil servants. When they released a support brochure, he wrote, "I am proud to be the executive sponsor. I'm sure this will be invaluable to all our Muslim colleagues, allies and friends across the NHS." He appears to endorse their guidance, saying everything the network does aligns to the NHS people promise. Mr Hobson provides reverse mentorship for Muslim staff, where NHS executives are mentored by chosen Muslim colleagues, specifically to learn about their, quote, lived experience. It's not clear whether members of other faith networks are afforded the same access to NHS execs. The network also hosts events, at least 2 of which included guest speaker Zahra Mohammed, who until recently was the head of the Muslim Council of Britain. The UK government has had a policy of non-engagement with the group since 2009, over historical concerns about extremism. Despite this, senior NHS staff attended one event named celebrating World Hijab Day, including the chair of the Derbyshire NHS Trust, Selina Ullar. Yet the NHS has had a partnership for more than a decade with the controversial council to run a project called Muslim Spiritual Care Provision to up the number of chaplains for Muslim patients. Mohammed regularly rails against the government for refusing to engage with her. Here's a clip of her explaining how the council works.
It doesn't matter what your religious level is or your theology, you're going to face Islamophobia or anti-Muslim hatred. You're going to face discrimination. If you're a young British Muslim and you're looking at the opportunities you have, again, the external world isn't wondering which madhab you're following or which community you belong to. It's the perception of you that will in some ways limit or accelerate your opportunity. So the way that we do it is we work where we can agree and we build on that. And division and difference will always be there. But ultimately, when it comes to these issues and the issue that we're talking about today, it's irrelevant. If you are Muslim women or you're Somali Muslim women or Arab Muslim women, whatever you are, you're facing verbal or physical abuse because of that.
We've asked the NHS for more information on their connection to the MCB. Ben Habib told me DEI is to blame for creeping religion in our public services.
if an organisation wishes to tick the box of DEI, then one way to do it is to promote these views. And so that's the backdrop to it. And the other thing to bear in mind is that Islam is a proselytizing, muscular religion. It's not like Christianity, which takes a back seat in both society as well as its desires to convert people to their religion. And the opposite of Judaism, which seeks not to proselytize and convert. It is a muscular religion on its front foot, wishing to take more people in. So what Islam has done, which is very clever and natural, I suppose, from Islam's perspective, is to use the fabric of DEI and effectively a fabric that we ourselves have created in this country, and to exploit it to convert people to Islam. So what we've seen is Islam behaving like a rational ideology and exploiting the mechanisms afforded to it by the British political, legal, regulatory infrastructure to deliver its aims of proselytizing.
But we have top civil servants who are going one step further, and they're allowing themselves to spend their time that we all pay for to be mentored by Muslim members of staff about their lived experience. Why would they do that?
I think they see it. It's all part of this woke culture. It's all part of being, politically acceptable, doing what they would see as the promotion of these minority rights. So the whole woke culture is the promotion of minority interests over and above, and more frequently than not to the detriment of the majority. It's part of this liberal ideology that everyone should be entitled to do that which they wish to do. And Islam has successfully painted itself almost as a victim in the United Kingdom, which is why the term Islamophobia has been capable of being coined, because, Islamophobia literally means the irrational fear of Islam. And in the pursuit of not wishing to be part of that, not wishing to be part of someone suffering from Islamophobia, or, part of the mainstream so-called mainstream wishing to shut Islam down in any way, people are taking the knee to Islam.
So the people that are advocates for this, they'll say that this improves productivity because people feel comfortable at work.
Garbage.
Do you think
it's all
this
garbage.
Is good value for money?
It's just garbage. The idea that, everyone says multiculturalism is great, we'll get lots of different cultures, lots of different thoughts coming to the UK, we'll interact in some massive, homogenous, hot, bubbling, frothing pot of diversity of thought. That's all garbage, because what we're doing with the protective blanket and the promotion of these minority ethnicities, belief systems, etc., is creating multicultural silos in the UK. What we're doing is creating division of thought, where actually you're prohibited from challenging these ideologies, because these ideologies are protected. And that's why the word, again, just coming around, full circle to it, the word Islamophobia exists. It's designed to shut down free speech. J.D. Vance was absolutely right. We have an absence of free speech in Europe.
When I've been out speaking to people on the street about this story, they've been baffled. What can we do to start, moving this forward and not doing this anymore?
So there are a number of things we need to do. We need to reverse the entire regulatory and legal framework that is DEI, and that requires getting rid of the Equalities Act, getting rid of regulations put in place by multiple regulatory bodies like the Financial Reporting Council, the FCA, Ofcom, you name a regulatory body, and they all require those that they regulate to practice DEI. So all of that needs to be removed. The Equalities Act needs to go, which is the foundation of this. The Equalities Act is inappropriately named. It is an act that encourages discrimination.
The government still refuses to engage with the MCB. So the question is why it's working with government departments on projects like the Muslim spiritual care provision and publishing guides like this on advice to staff during Ramadan. Now, the NHS is a sprawling bureaucracy. It's the largest employer in the country with over 1.5 million employees. What their staff is exposed to is of consequence. As government bodies come under closer scrutiny in the US, is it time to do the same with Britain? Many would argue the focus of NHS staff should be on patient treatment only. With very long waiting times and stretched resources, is the very notion of a religious network of staff indulgent? And in any case, is the health service the appropriate setting to produce a guide for converts to Islam? I'm Nick Dunning for GB News. Replying to a request for comment via NHS Derbyshire Trust, Selina Ullar said, "It is important that we support and celebrate the contribution of NHS colleagues. If all our staff feel included, we can provide patients with the best quality care." Chris Hobson and M. Wilkinson Bryce were approached for comment via NHS England, who said, "Senior NHS England managers regularly engage with staff across the entire NHS workforce to hear and understand their experiences of working in the NHS in order to provide better care for patients. We're a diverse country, and that is reflected in the NHS workforce. It's vital that we make sure all our staff feel included so we can recruit and retain an NHS workforce that is as productive as possible." On the NHS Ramadan challenge, a spokesperson continued, "It is obviously entirely reasonable for NHS staff to take part in Ramadan if they would like to, including as a way to recognise the tens of thousands of Muslims working in the health service." Halima Dagia, Riaz Patel and Shahail Sheikh were contacted for comment via the NHS Muslim Network. NHS England replied, informing us the network is reviewing its guidance and developing a new strategy to support Muslim colleagues across the NHS under new leadership.